You must be reading my mind. You have to be ready to pivot. And that is the mark of a great business plan. I'm like, what the heck are you, like, what are you talking about?
Welcome to this episode of Hues in Business Podcast, where we're celebrating businesses of color worldwide. Sponsored by Melissa.com. Ready to build your own sellable digital lead magnet? Get the Sellable in a Day quiz. Book your ideation session with me, Mel, and gain your concerted operation strategy all at Melissa.com. I'm Melanie of Melissa.com, simplifying the operational chaos that keeps brilliant women stuck. Contact me today at Melissa.com. Thank you. Enjoy the episode.
Dr. Scorpio Rogers, I thank you very much for your yes. It is such a privilege and an honor to be able to speak with you today. Please share with everyone who you are, your business, and everything you would like for us to know. Thank you.
It is 100% my pleasure to be with you. It's more than my pleasure. It is my honor. My name is Dr. Scorpio Rogers. The name of my business is Scorpio Focal Point Coaching. And what I do is I'm an executive coach. I coach primarily entrepreneurs. I also work with typically C-suite executives, and I do coach. I have some individuals that I coach. If you're not familiar with the concept, or maybe some of the users aren't familiar with the concept of an executive coach, what I like to use is an analogy. And so Bob Bowman is the coach for Michael Phelps, the swimmer. And Bob Bowman helped Michael Phelps get to all 28 of his Olympic gold medals. And so when we think about coaches, we tend to think about athletes. But what a coach does, first of all, anyone can be coached. Everyone has a skill. And most humans always think we're better than we are. That's just human nature. But what a coach does is a coach helps that person or athlete see their blind spots and help give them some coaching to help them see around their blind spots and help to elevate their performance to the best it can be. We tend to talk about coaching for athletes. I do the same thing that coaches for athletes. I do that with entrepreneurs, and I do that with executives, and I can also do that with individuals. So I'll stop there. So that's what I do. That's who I am and what I do.
Fantastic. I understand you served in education. You are certainly experienced in building and equipping others' lives. Tell me a little bit about those experiences that you will just never forget as highlights of being a coach.
So I'm a native New Yorker. I was born in Harlem, New York, and I was raised in the South Bronx. And I'd like to say I'm fairly stereotypical in that I was raised in the projects of the South Bronx, to a single parent, to a single mom. And so, fulfill several of the genuine negative stereotypes. It's always fairly intelligent. And I went to the Bronx High School of Science, which, if you're in New York, it's one of the 3 specialized high schools. I think it's the best high school in the universe. I'm a little bit biased, but it's a specialized high school. From Bronx Science, I went to Dartmouth College and studied computer science. But while I grew up in Harlem in the South Bronx, I was actually poor, but I didn't know I was poor. And I didn't really know that or realize that. And once I kind of understood that I was poor and that there were other people, you know, doing a lot better than me financially and economically, I started to look around and understand 2 things. I started to really genuinely believe, and I still do to this day, that the 2 best ways to get out of poverty are education and entrepreneurship. And I had to kind of learn that. So that's kind of the impetus for me helping entrepreneurs, or part of the impetus for me helping entrepreneurs. I really enjoy working with entrepreneurs that help their communities, and specifically Black communities, because that's where I've come from. And so I have, you mentioned I was a teacher, so I've been a college professor of entrepreneurship for approximately 20 years. So for 17 years, I was a professor, and 3 years I was an administrator. I was the vice president of 2 campuses, had about 2,000 students under my auspices. But as a professor, I've taught every single entrepreneurship class. My Ph.D. is in entrepreneurship, so I understand all of the research and all of the academic theory behind entrepreneurship. And I've owned several businesses, so I understand the reality of owning businesses and the reality of being an entrepreneur. When I say entrepreneurs are my people, I did consulting with entrepreneurs for about 25 years. I'm own consulting company with entrepreneurs. And I also built the Business Incubation Center. And if any of your listeners aren't familiar with the Business Incubation Center, typically they're either sponsored by the government or by academic institutions. I built mine at my institution. And there to either help businesses start or help businesses grow. And so I created one to help businesses grow. And these businesses, all the businesses were in the Bronx. And so to help businesses grow in the Bronx. And so I enjoy helping businesses. Um, One of my favorite clients is a gentleman who I met several times, like by happenstance. I met him once at a church in Harlem, vending. I met him then. A few months later, I met him in DC, and he was vending, and we started talking. And then I met him once, literally outside of a of a coffee shop, and his bike had just been stolen. And I had pulled up, and I was dropping my daughter off, and we started talking. And I'd seen him a bunch, and I knew what he was doing. I'd purchased some product from him, and I'm like, I want you to join my incubation center. And this is a really smart gentleman, engineer by trade, and he had a business model that just wouldn't really work in the long run, right? Short run it'll work, but it wouldn't really. And so I remember talking to him about a lot of different things, and he changed his model. He went a technology route. He had a little bit of technology background as well, and that business model also had some flaws in it. Um, and then finally he's changed to his current model where he is very successful. And I think about him because he wants to help students get jobs specifically in STEM fields, and students not necessarily have to go to college. So do a lot of different jobs. Phlebotomy comes to uh, mind right away, where you can have several months of training and you can get a job. And some of these jobs pay $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year. So you don't necessarily have to go to college for 4 years to get a good paying job and be able to, again, bring yourself out of a poverty situation if you're in a poverty situation, and be able to make good money quickly and help support yourself and your family. And this gentleman has helped a number of young people of color get good jobs. And so I really enjoy working with him. And he's a typical entrepreneur where he's always doing multiple things, and he's great. He is great. And he's not underscore. He's great. But like everyone, he thinks he's better than he is, right? And then I've helped him view things a little differently, and because of that, he's changed what he's done, and he's been very successful.
I find it interesting that you mentioned you helped him to change his mindset. We have to be open to change, but I'd like to hear from your perspective how vital it is as creators, entrepreneurs, leaders, business owners, those paving the way, sometimes pioneers, right? Tell me about the significance of change and even your own personal experience of having to navigate change, perhaps multiple times to get to this point. Thank you.
Oh, that's such a great question. So so again, I taught entrepreneurship for about 17 years. I taught mostly in the college level. I taught actually in summers, I taught high school students for about 10 years, and I've taught several graduate classes. And I typically tell most entrepreneurs the most important word for an entrepreneur is flexibility. Because no matter how much you plan and a lot don't plan enough. Things will change. Things will happen, especially in this day and age with technology. Things happen very rapidly, and you have to be ready to change. You have to be ready to pivot. You have to be flexible. It is, I say, probably the one most important skill, if you consider flexibility a skill, which I do, that an entrepreneur needs to have. I mean, they should have knowledge. They should obviously have integrity, and with the knowledge, they should know how to do things, whether it's look after the money or do marketing or understand who their customers are. But if they're not flexible, again, we all think we're better than we are. No one gets it right the first time. Most entrepreneurs fail at least twice before they hit a successful business. Henry Ford of the Ford Motor Company, he had two other motor companies before the Ford Motor Company. The first two failed. And so it's important a lot of entrepreneurs fail their first time. Some people fail and get dejected and don't try again. But there's very few entrepreneurs who their first venture was very successful. And so you have to be willing to pivot because things change. And for example, the economy changes. So if you are a restaurant and gas and oil prices are going up for your restaurant, you need to be able to pivot. You might need to, because you still have to heat your place. And if the prices are going up, now that changes all of your revenue. And so when you used to be making $5 on a certain meal, now because the prices have gone up, now maybe you're only making $2, and that may not be enough for you to pay your employees. So you've got to be able to pivot, and you've got to understand, well, this is going up. Maybe it's temporary, maybe it's permanent. I need to do different things. So the example I'll use when gas and oil goes up. Your price goes up as a restaurant owner, but also your customers' gas and oil prices go up. And so now, where they may have once a week, twice a month, once a month going out to eat, well, if their prices go up, they have less money to do discretionary things. So now you have less customers coming and your prices are going up. Well, what do you do to stay in business? The immediate thought is, I need to raise my prices. Well, if you raise your prices, and again, everyone else's expenses are going up, then maybe the few people who come, they may even be less likely to come. So you have to be very nimble and be able to pivot. So maybe you need to offer some different foods. Maybe you need to offer specials where you order, and it's counterintuitive, maybe you order a half price special on Tuesdays, and now before, maybe you were only getting 10 or 20 people in, but a half price special, now you get 50, 60 people in. And even though you're charging less, because you have volume, you're making more money. And so you want to just be nimble, you want to be flexible. And it is, I say the most important skill for an entrepreneur is to be flexible.
Share with the listeners the importance of the business plan, selecting your business. You have options. Help us to understand why it's so important to set that firm foundation from the get-go, and maybe take a little bit longer to get started, but with a plan.
You must be reading my mind. I'm going to ask you for some lotto tickets soon. So I am one of the few people, I don't say one of the few, but I am a staunch proponent of business plans. And it's very interesting when you look at kind of the history of academia. There was a trend to do business plans for a number of years. And then within the last 20 years, we started moving to these kind of micro plans and then these one-page plans. And now you hear people say, well, we don't need a business plan. We can kind of get started and build it as we go along. I am a proponent of putting together a business plan. And that is one of the first questions I ask every single entrepreneur I meet. I was like, do you have a business plan? And if they say yes, I say, is it written? Because some people have business plans in their head, right? And you'd be surprised, somebody says, well, it's not exactly written, but no. You need a written, physical business plan. And here's the reasons why. Most people, and there may even be some people, some of your listeners right now say, well, you only need a business plan if you want to get money. right? That is one of the myths about business plan, that you only need one when you want money because your bank or whoever's going to finance you is going to ask you for your business plan. That is the third reason to get a business plan. That's not the main reason. The main reason to get a business plan is to vet your idea and see if it is actually a viable idea. I've worked with several would-be business owners, and we worked on their business plan. And once we completed their business plan, they came to the conclusion of, I can never make enough money on this business to live, to survive, for it to be sustainable. And that is the mark of a great business plan, to really let you see, is this idea viable? Because there are a lot of businesses that start that aren't viable. So 50% of the businesses in the United States close within 5 years, 90% close within 9 years. The ones that close within 5 years, I would bet, and I have no empirical evidence on this, but I would bet a good number of them started without a plan. And what happens is, you start a lot of, again, we think we're great, right? So I'm just going to start this business and I'm going to make money. So that's the biggest myth, is that entrepreneurship is easy and you just start and you just make money, right? And you'd be surprised how many people think that. Or you think, well, those other people failed. I'm not going to fail because I'm me, right? And then I'm just going to go and start a business. And so you have a lot of entrepreneurs like that. I don't need a plan. I'll start and I'll put the plan together as I'm going along. I like to say, there's an expression, building the plane while you're in the air, while you're flying. And I like to say that starting a business without a business plan is like flying a plane without your flight plan of where you're going. And so we used to say driving a car, but you can drive a car and stall out somewhere, it's fine. Well, if you're flying a plane without your flight plan and you run out of gas, well, you're gonna fall, crash, and burn, and that's gonna be the end of you. So I like to use that as an analogy. What we see with businesses that don't have plans is that the owner may have a little bit of money, so he or she is putting money into it. Things aren't going exactly right. They're putting some more money into it. They figure, oh, now I got to pivot this way. So they put some more money into it. Then about 16, 18 months out, they've spent all of their money. They've spent all their parents' money. They've spent all of their siblings' money. They spent a few cousins and aunties' money, maybe grandma's money, maybe a few friends' money. And then they're like, oh, wow, this business is not going to make me any money. I can't be positive. I can't make money in this business. So now what happens? It's Thanksgiving. They can't go to Thanksgiving dinner because they owe everyone in their family money. And so they're alone by themselves, where if they had put together, like you said, it takes a little time. It takes 2 or 3 months to put together a really good, accurate business plan. But if they had spent that time to put together the plan and spent whatever, a few $1,000s to work with someone to put together a plan, they would have saved thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. And they would, a lot of times people, their credit starts to suffer. Again, if they're borrowing money from friends and family, relationships can be strained when you borrow money from people and they expect, you're whoever, and grandma thinks you're the best. And so there's no way in the world that you're going to fail, right? People can think this, but now when you fail and you can't give grandma and grandpa their money back, well, that's not a good thing. So the main reason to put together a business plan is to vet your idea. And a good business plan is going to have metrics and have numbers and have all the things that you need. So that's the first thing. And if you can't make money at it, obviously don't start it. The second reason is, now that business plan becomes your flight plan or becomes your roadmap. And so as you are executing the business, you should be checking your business plan really weekly, but at the minimum monthly, to see, are you on target for the things that you projected? And if you're on target, great. Very rarely are people on target. If you're not on target, what things do you need to do to be flexible and to pivot such that you get yourself back on track to get to where you want to be? And if you have a plan, it's a lot easier to tweak this, to tweak that. Maybe you planned on selling 3 products and now you realize you need to sell 4. Maybe you're selling 3 products. Now you realize, well, this one isn't really doing well. The other 2 are fine. I need to drop this one and only sell 2. Right? There are a lot of different things that you can do once you look at the plan and look at the revenues that are coming in. Because a lot of times entrepreneurs aren't really tracking the revenues and aren't really tracking the spend as well as they should. But if you have that plan, you can start tracking against the plan and seeing where you are. And so that's the second reason. And the third reason is if you need money. Because once you hit a certain size and you're looking to grow and expand, then any lender is going to ask you for a business plan to see that you've taken the time to vet your idea. And, lenders believe if you're too lazy to even take the exercise to create a business plan, then that's how you're going to be in your business. You're going to be too lazy to make your business successful.
That's good. Were you ever of the mindset of, oh, I don't need a plan? How were you able to come into the wisdom?
Right. So thank you for that question. So I tell people I was an entrepreneur before I'd ever heard the word. In high school, I was a DJ. I was actually a DJ for 17 years. I never heard the word entrepreneur when I was a DJ. I was playing music and people were paying me, right? And so I was a business owner, right, in my mind. I went to Dartmouth College. I was a computer science major. I worked in computers for a number of years, but also while I was doing that, I started a business selling fraternity and sorority merchandise. And when I started that business, I started with a partner, and we kept talking about putting together a business plan. And we got together sometime, but we didn't have a real plan. And we were just winging it. We were going from event to event to event. We bought a lot of different merchandise. We were selling different merchandise. We were selling merchandise to different organizations. And so we were going from event to event to event. We were very event focused, and we were doing our finances from one event to the next event. And so I didn't really have a plan. And so three things happened. One, my business partner and I, and he's still a very good friend of mine. We speak every other week, but we decided to split because he wanted to do college stuff, and I still only wanted to do fraternity and sorority merchandise. So we were splitting. And again, if we had a plan with the idea of how we wanted to grow, I think it would have prevented that. And so we split. Shortly after we split, I was in New York. I'm actually in New York now. I bought out a business in Norfolk, Virginia. So I bought out a fraternity and sorority store in Norfolk, Virginia. And so I was driving down every few weeks. When I bought out the store, I did two things. I kept the two employees that were in the store and actually hired my cousin who was in school down there. So I was able to hire a family member, which was one of my greatest joys. And all three of them were college students. And so the money I paid them helped them pay for their tuition, helped them get through school. I often say the best joy I've ever had was when I wrote my first salary check to my employees. I'm sorry I don't have it anymore, but the first check I wrote for someone is like, I am paying someone's salary. Like, I was like, wow, like I am a part of the American dream. It was a really big time moment when I wrote and signed that check. So I bought out a business, but the third thing that happened is I went to Columbia. So my thought was, wow, if I'm doing all this stuff and I've never taken a business class, I should probably take a business class and I'll be doing better. And I like to say that when I went to Columbia, I learned two things. And I learned a million things, but I learned two things at a very high level. One, I learned that without ever taking a business class, I'd actually done a whole lot of things right. And the second thing I'd learned is that without taking any business class, I'd done a whole lot of things wrong. And if I'd had a little bit more knowledge, it would have mitigated me doing a bunch of things wrong and losing, a chunk of money that I lost because I did a bunch of things wrong. I started that business. The beginning of that business was Fraternally Yours. So I started Fraternally Yours. I didn't have a business plan. And in going to school and at Columbia, I got an MBA, and my concentration was entrepreneurship. I took every entrepreneurship class they had. Entrepreneurship and strategy. I took all the entrepreneurship and strategy classes they had. And I realized I actually wrote a business plan while I was getting my MBA. And I realized how much knowledge that I didn't have when I started, and how much had I done some research, I could have been so much more prepared to be successful. And so that was the impetus of me knowing and understanding the importance of a business plan. And actually, so I did start, I was DJing. I didn't even know what an entrepreneur was. So that was actually a business where I was being paid. I had no business plan for that. But that was a little simpler with just me and buying records and going to parties and things like that. But the business when I had Fraternally Yours, especially once I bought out the other business, and I had employees, I had inventory. So I would date myself. So this is one thing I'll say that your listeners might not even understand. So I was in New York. My store was in Norfolk, Virginia. I was getting my MBA. So I was working full time. I was going to school full time. I was getting my MBA. Every night, my employees would fax me the sheets of what was sold. And I was manually tracking all of my inventory in a spreadsheet. So if I bought, just use simple numbers, if I bought 12 Alpha Phi Alpha hats, and then I sold 9 of them, then I knew I needed to order another 12. Everything you had to buy in dozens. And so I was manually tracking all of my inventory on spreadsheets. And every night they would fax me what was sold so I could keep track of that. And I remember a time when I bought these 12 hats. It was an experiment. I wasn't sure if they would sell. And about 2 or 3 days in, I had sold 4. But when my employees did the inventory, I had like 7. So 1 was missing. 1 had disappeared, or we call, it walked away. Leakage is what the term. So it had walked away. And it turns out, so long story, one of my employees happened to have given it to his girlfriend. And so my employees got stuff. I didn't charge. They basically got stuff at my cost, right? So that was an incentive for them not to steal stuff. And he forgot to write down that he took the hat and gave it to his girlfriend. So we were able to have a conversation about that and get everything straightened out. But so I was manually tracking things. But again, having a plan and understanding I needed systems in place to manage inventory, manage employees, pay bills. That was really important.
I love it. I really do. I like the perspective that you're offering us. And when you say research, it's worth the time to research, and that could have saved you a lot of money. Could you give us more perspective on how important and significant the research is, as well as tying that into vetting how viable the business is?
Sure. Again, thank you for that question. So one thing, I didn't know who my competitors were. I had some idea, but I had a whole lot more competitors than I thought and knew. And looking at my competitors, I started looking at the products and services they were selling. Well, it was mostly products. There weren't many services. And that's why I started. I started because my friend and I, we couldn't find any fraternity and sorority merchandise. And there was only one store in Virginia, in East Orange. It was in East Orange, New Jersey. Right, one in East Orange, New Jersey, and it was one at St. John's. It didn't have a lot of stuff and didn't have stuff for our my fraternity. And so I started selling to my fraternity and immediately expanded to what's known as the National Panalytic, which is 9 organizations. So I started selling to all 9 of the organizations. When I bought out my store in Norfolk, Virginia, when I looked, the store I bought was selling to about, let me get this right, 23 organizations, but not the 9 organizations I belonged to, even though they were down there. So when I bought the store, I had a knowledge of merchandise inventory for my 9 stores, and I combined that with the other 23 stores. So now I was selling to 32 different organizations. I mean, it actually allowed me to learn about the Interfraternity Council organization. So kind of big nationally white fraternities and sororities. I'd been selling to black fraternities and sororities only, but now I was selling to everybody, and I learned a lot about them. But in terms of research, I didn't know prices of merchandise. I didn't know where to buy merchandise from. I didn't know who my competitors were. I didn't know how much they were selling things at. I didn't know. I remember this. It's funny the things you remember, because this was years and years and years ago. It's funny things. My vision, my goal was to open up a store in Greenwich Village. And the reason I wanted to open up a store in Greenwich Village, because there's so much traffic and so many people walking by, that I figured that was like the heart of a shopping place. And people would come by every day, and it was very super easy to get to in New York, and all these people would flock there, was my thought. And I remember, I can still see it today. I went and looked at a spot, and the rent for that spot, and I don't remember how big it was. I'm going to say it was somewhere between 800 and 1,000 square feet. The rent for that spot, and this is in the early 1990s, was $5,000 a month. And to give you some context, the business I bought in Virginia, the rent for that was about $500 a month. So literally for what I paid almost 1 year down in Virginia was 1 month in New York. So just understanding some of those dynamics and realizing that, and I had started selling stuff before. If I had just dove into the store and tried to sell and just thought, because you think, oh, I'm going to sell $5,000. Yeah, it'll be easy. I'll do $10,000, $15,000 worth of stuff. Easy. Well, thank goodness I knew that was a challenge. And I knew that wouldn't happen. So I didn't open the store. Done some fun things. If you've heard of the Apollo, correct? Right. So hopefully some of your, or most, if not all of your listeners know about the Apollo. So I actually did a Black friends and sororities do what's called a step show. And it's syncopated routines. And so I actually sponsored a step show at the Apollo Theater in 1990, in June of 1990. I'm so mad at the Apollo Theater, and I'll say that because they were supposed to tape it, and they didn't tape it, and that was in our contract, and they did not live up to that part of the contract. I'll say it out loud because it's the truth. And so it was a step show for charity. And so I had the 9 organizations come and step, and each of them had a charity, and we had judges, and each organization charity would get some money, in the top 3 organizations, charities would have gotten more money. Well, I can tell you to that day, I remember it well. I thought we were going to make thousands and thousands of dollars. We lost $5,000 on that event. We didn't fill the venue, but we still had to pay the charities. And so that was $5,000 that had to come out of my pocket. And again, if I had done some planning and thought about it, had a better plan in place, I would have understood more and understood better and planned a little better. So that was just, part of my journey in terms of researching the prices of the things, researching your competitors in the industry. If you have a physical space, research rents. You want to research things like insurance. My business, I travel all the time. I travel to different states to do conventions. Well, how much are the convention prices? How much are the hotel prices? How much is the travel prices to ship something via air? How much does it cost? I lived in New York. I didn't have a car. How much it cost to rent a car for the weekend if somewhere you could drive to? So just all of those, I'll call them hidden costs that I didn't think about. And I had done no research prior to just diving in and starting to do things. But had I done some of that research, I think I would have looked at the business a lot differently and done things a lot differently before I started.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for sharing. I'm sure you're giving multiple people great perspective that's helping them and saving them along the way. So that's fantastic. Thank you.
Right. And one thing, let me add just one thing to that answer.
Time.
That I think that's important for entrepreneurs. One thing that I find for most entrepreneurs is they do not understand money. You need to understand money. There are 3 financial statements that everyone uses: income statement, cash flow statement, and balance sheet. You need to understand those 3 things. If you don't understand the money, you are not going to be profitable. You might take a course. There are a bunch of free courses that you could take on that. Now, again, in my day and age, the internet existed, but it wasn't as robust in terms of providing information as it is now. You can provide courses online. You can buy books, not only textbooks, but regular books that, accounting for dummies or something like that explains them. I always tell everyone that I speak to, go to the library. The library will have 6 to 10 books on it. Grab them all, read the same section in every book. A couple of them will be too kind of babyish in how they're written. You won't like those. A couple of them will be too technical in how they're written. You don't like those. And there'll be 1 or 2, at least 2, that are written kind of perfect to how you intake information, and it's clear. And so buy those 2 books. Read them from cover to cover. Read them again. Make sure you understand what they're talking about and how to set up your finances and how to set up a financial system, it's minimum Excel, Most people use QuickBooks. A lot of entrepreneurs use QuickBooks, but you need to have something to track the money, right? You need to track your expenses, and you need to uh, to to um, to count your expenses and count your revenue. And so that's the one thing I would say. Also, research accounting systems. And in this day and age, there's so much you can research. You know, your website, how much is that going to cost? Your SEO, your marketing, your CRM, your customer relationship management system. You should research all of those things because you're going to need them to be successful.
Awesome. 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 And the resilience and the bounce back spirit, what kept you going? Based on your experiences, what would you say was at the root of that bounce back?
So you're not going to like this answer. Your listeners might not like this answer, appreciate it. So the answer is I'm Scorpio. That's the answer. But to try to give that some more context, that's always who I've been. I'm a Scorpio. We're dynamic people, and I've always been dynamic. I've always been resilient. I have a never say die attitude and a never fail attitude. So that's always been who I am. And not everyone is born with that or has that innate. And I definitely attribute that to where I grew up. I grew up, I saw some very dangerous things. I can remember, again, it's funny the things you remember. I remember very vividly walking to the store and walking through the middle of a gun sale deal of someone was buying guns. I mean, where I grew up, there was a lot of drugs and a lot of people selling drugs and a lot of bad stuff going on. And I remember a situation where a good friend of mine all of a sudden grabbed me and he said, "Hey, we'll walk." And he goes to this place and he literally pulls out a gun and says, "Hey, these guys are going to try to rip us off, and I'm not going to let it." I'm like, "What the heck are you like? What are you talking about?" And he was like, "When we go around the corner, I'm going to be waiting." I was like, "What are you like this?" And this is, I'm still in high school then, so this is high school. Yeah. And when we turned the corner, I saw a cab. I grabbed him. I pulled him in the cab. I'm like, "We're getting out of here. I don't know what's going on here, but this is not my deal." And so I grew up in tough surroundings. Again, I was always pretty studious, and so that was a benefit to me. But just growing up where I was, you had to be aware of your surroundings, and that I think helped me to grow up to be kind of tough and resilient. And so that's who I've always been.
You gave the great story and example about the brilliant young man, the vendor, and it sounds like he was very coachable. Coachability is a big factor towards how the situation will end, right? If someone wanted to hire you as a coach right now, today, after hearing this conversation, tell us who your ideal client is, because we know not everyone is for everyone.
Right. Most people are very focused and have one target market. And mine is a little broader than most people, even though they say it shouldn't be. My primary target is definitely entrepreneurs. And they are entrepreneurs that are in growing businesses. Ideally, an entrepreneur that's been in business several years and their business is starting to grow. So maybe they have 5+ employees. And maybe they have, I'll say, $1.5 million in revenue or more. Now, I meet tons of people that don't fit that criteria. And so I have different programs, and I also work with C-suite executives. So in terms of my coaching, I'll say I have 3 boxes or 3 kind of frameworks that I move people through. The first one is clarity. And you'd be surprised how many people aren't really clear on what they want to do. They have a general idea, like the first entrepreneur I talked about. He had a general idea that he wanted to help kids in school, and he wanted to help kids get jobs in STEM fields. And that was what he wanted to do. And so his first business model was he provided tutoring through like the MCA to students to help coach them through. That wasn't a sustainable model. Once an entrepreneur is clear, you'd be surprised. Once they're laser focused on what they know, what their mission is and their vision, and they're laser focused, things start opening up for them. Because a lot of most entrepreneurs are doing 3 things at once, and they're scattered. That's what I find with most entrepreneurs, they're scattered. Once you are laser focused on that one main thing, things all of a sudden start to align. It's just amazing how it happens. It really happens. So once we have that clarity, the second part we do, most coaches call it growth. I call it execution. So we look at how to execute what you're doing better, how to grow the business. And that's what we're looking at. We look at different ways to do that. Invariably, as part of the growth and execution comes the third component, which is leadership. Because as you're growing the business, one, you need to be a good leader to your organization. And I say, to use example, if you have 5 employees, you can be a great leader to 4 of them, but the 5th person really does not resonate with your leadership style. So your leadership style is not putting that person in the best place to succeed or helping that person. Once we do some tweaks such that you understand that and you can now communicate, that's one of the big things I tell people how to communicate better. Communicate with that person and resonate with their leadership, how they take leadership and how they take input. Once you tweak that, your organization starts to soar, because what happened before is that you had 4 people on board and one person doing his or her best, but not aligned with how you were trying to lead them. That means that person isn't performing their best, and the other 4 in some way, shape, or form are compensating for that one person. Once you get that person aligned and on board, now that person is performing at their best, which means the other 4 don't have to compensate for that person, so they get to do their best. And that one little incremental tweak now has exponential addition to your ROI. Now your organization is really starting to soar and grow. The other part of leadership, one is the leader, him or herself, understanding. And there are a lot of times when a leader, him or herself, they're the problem, right? They're the problem why the organization isn't growing, whether they're dogmatic in how they go about doing things, whether they're not clear in how they do things, whether they change too much how they do things, and so their employees are unclear. That those are all different scenarios that happen. So the third thing is now empowering people in the organization and help them become leaders. And so if you're a leader and you're too much in the weeds and too much in the technical and not looking at the strategic vision, your company's not going to grow. But once you empower 1 or 2 people to become leaders themselves and help move the team, now you don't have to focus on some more of the technical things. You can start focusing on the more strategic things and really help to build and elevate the business. So those 3 things are clarity, growth plus execution, and leadership. So those are the 3 ways that I help and coach people. I've coached different people. I have a bunch of different modules. I do one-on-one coaching. Typically it's once a week for about an hour, or once every other week for about an hour. I have a couple other programs. I have one where I coach people quarterly. So we'll meet 1 to 2 hours every quarter. And I'm actually starting a new program where I coach people once a month. And I'm doing that because of one of my previous/current clients. So I had a 3-month coaching engagement with this person. This person's in the political arena, so they're a little bit different. And I did a coaching module called Personal Performance. And so we were helping this person's performance. We were helping them be better at what they do and helping improve them at what they do. And we finished the personal performance, and this person said, I still need to work with you. I still need to work with you. So I want to work with you. And so I'm going to start that. I also do group coaching. So especially with entrepreneurs, we'll take 4 to 6 entrepreneurs and we'll have them in a group. And how that typically works, we'll have group sessions, and then I'll do some individual sessions with the entrepreneurs on one-on-one. But in the group coaching, it's great because it's a little bit less expensive for the entrepreneur, but he or she learns from that group. And typically, there'll be people from different industries. People have the same problems. Like even if they're in different industries, they have the same problems. So it's an employee problem, it's a supplier problem, it's a marketing problem, it's an IT problem. People have the same problems, even if they're in different industries. And so we share solutions to things we do. And maybe person A has a problem, person B had that problem, and here's the things that they did that didn't work. So they can share the things that they didn't work. And maybe person C has the same problem, and here are the things that did work. And so everyone's learning from each other as we go along. So those are the coaching module. I also do workshops, and I do speaking engagements. So I just came from Detroit. I was in a speaking engagement. I was something called a leadership experience tour, where I gave a keynote speech to people. And I talked about the championship mindset and making sure you're in a playoff mindset in everything that you do. So a lot of different workshops. Time management is an easy example of a workshop I do. So I work with corporations. I work typically with C-suite leaders, but they may hire me to work with their employees, manager level employees or director level employees, and do workshops on something like communication styles or on time management. So things to help the workers be better. So I do those. So I do one-on-one coaching. I do group coaching. I do workshops. And I have something coming up this September called the Entrepreneurship Growth Course. The Entrepreneurship Growth Course is a 3-month course, and it's 12 weeks. It's once a week. If you miss a week, it's all recorded and you have access to the recordings for a year. And at the end of this entrepreneurship growth course, and this is great for emerging entrepreneurs, they will have a strategic plan that they can use for the next year, multiple years, but definitely next year to grow their business. They also have some marketing and sales plans and insights to grow their business. So I recommend if you have any entrepreneurs that they look into my strategic I'm an entrepreneur growth course, and that's going to start in September. So they would need to reach out to me in August, and we'll get them enrolled. It's a very reasonable price. And if they mention you, I will give them a 20% discount. If they mention your podcast, I will give them a 20% discount. So how they can reach me, and this is the easiest thing in the world. So there's 7 days a week. There are 24 hours a day. I'm a coach. My name is Scorpio Rogers. If they want to reach me, they can either call me or text me at 724 Coach SR, which is right here, 724 Coach SR. You can see that behind me. That is my number. Also, with a unique name like Scorpio, I am the only Scorpio Rogers on LinkedIn. So they can connect with me on LinkedIn. I have a lot of people that reach out to me on LinkedIn. And last but not least, and I encourage them to go to my website and learn about me, learn about the business. And my website is scorpiorogers.focalpointcoaching.com. So again, Scorpio Rogers, Rogers, .focalpointcoaching.com. And so those are the 3 ways to reach me. All very easy. I always pick up my phone. I'm a phone person. And that's the easiest way to call or text me, and I'll be happy to speak with any and all of your listeners.
That's fantastic. The website, the phone number, 724 Coach SR for Scorpio Rogers. And you've got the 12-week program coming out that's on demand, in addition to the group coaching, the one-to-one, whether it be weekly, bi-weekly, or quarterly, or monthly, whatever is needed. That's good to know. Good to know. Did I understand correctly? Are you an author?
I am in the process of writing my book. I was hoping to have it out already, but it takes a little time to get that stuff down. So my goal is to have it out by the end of the year. And if once I bring it out, I'll be happy to give your listeners a discount on that as well. Once I start to make that announcement. So I said it here. It's going to come out. Just remind me I said it. I'll be happy to give them a discount.
That's a generous spirit. That was absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And I'd love to have you come back and share about the book, and of course, celebrate the book and promote it here. And I'll be praying for you regarding that process, because as you're speaking and coaching and delivering digital product at this point, you certainly are going to be implementing the time management that you perhaps
Yes.
got there. Thank you so very much. This has been wonderful. If there was an absolute last vital thought that you would not want to leave everyone without saying, what would that be, Doctor?
I would say that success is intentional. No one is accidentally successful. So success is intentional. Plan for your success. And if you plan for your success and have clear vision, you will achieve your success.
Well, thank you. Open invitation anytime. Very grateful for you sharing your wisdom today. Thank you.
I am definitely going to come back. I will take you up for that. I want to thank you for having me. And I'm going to ask you to do me one favor.
Yeah.
Keep having an impactful rest of the week like you always do. Thank you.